What kind of country is Austria really? A place where same-sex marriage is legal, euthanasia is legal, and even gender reassignment surgery can be covered by public health care. A country where you can legally pay for companionship, where mixed nude saunas are completely normal, and where people casually walk naked through forest camps without anyone thinking it's strange. But behind this modern and controversial image hides something even more shocking. Austria was once one of the most powerful empires in human history. A dynasty that conquered half of Europe not through war, but through marriage, while other nations fought bloody battles for land. Austria simply married into power and quietly took control of kingdoms across the continent. And strangely enough, the exact thing that made Austria powerful would eventually become the reason for its collapse. Today, Austria looks peaceful, elegant, and low profile. It is famous for Mozart, Beethoven, Freud, Swarovski crystals, Alpine mountains, and Red Bull. Most people see it as a rich European country filled with music, art, skiing, and beautiful architecture. But if you travel back several centuries, Austria was anything but quiet. It stood at the center of European politics, controlling massive territories and influencing almost every major conflict on the continent. Austria sits right in the heart of Europe. Its location made it a natural gateway between East and West throughout history. Invading armies moving into Europe from the East often had to pass through Austrian territory first. Because of that, Austria became a shield for Europe for hundreds of years. Today, Austria has a population of around 9 million people and a GDP per capita of nearly $60,000. It ranks among the richest and most developed countries in Europe. The country may not be large, but its influence throughout history was enormous. For centuries, whenever Europe entered chaos, Austria somehow ended up at the center of it all. But here is what made Austria unique. Most empires expanded through military conquest. Austria chose a completely different strategy. Instead of fighting endless wars, the Austrian ruling family married into other royal families across Europe. While others were busy spilling blood on battlefields, Austria was quietly building alliances in royal bedrooms. This strategy became so famous that Europe created a saying about it: "Let others wage war. You, happy Austria, marry." And unbelievably, it worked. The family behind Austria's rise was the Habsburg dynasty. At its peak, the Habsburg Empire controlled enormous territories across Europe, including parts of modern-day Austria, Spain, the Netherlands, Belgium, Hungary, Bohemia, and even overseas colonies. The rise of the Habsburgs truly began with a man named Rudolf I. At the beginning, Rudolf was not especially powerful. He was only a minor nobleman among many European rulers. But he had two advantages that changed history forever. First, he understood politics better than almost anyone else. Second, he had many children. That might sound funny today, but in medieval Europe, children were political weapons. Every son or daughter could be married into another royal family. Each marriage created a new alliance, a new connection, and potentially a new territory. At the time, the Holy Roman Empire needed a new emperor. Many powerful rulers wanted the position, especially the King of Bohemia, whose military strength was impressive. Logically, he should have won, but Rudolf played a smarter game. Out of the 7 princes responsible for choosing the emperor, 4 were already his sons-in-law. The election was basically over before it even started. Rudolf became Holy Roman Emperor. And from that moment, Austria's destiny changed forever. The Holy Roman Empire was not really a united empire. It was more like a loose alliance of princes and kingdoms. The rulers inside the empire did not want an emperor who was too powerful because they feared losing their own independence. Rudolf appeared perfect. He was politically connected but not overwhelmingly strong militarily. He looked controllable. That illusion would eventually allow the Habsburg family to dominate Europe for centuries. The Habsburgs quickly realized something revolutionary. Marriage could achieve what war often could not over the next generations. They perfected this strategy to an unbelievable level. One of the greatest examples was Maximilian I. In 1477, he married Mary of Burgundy, the only heir to one of the richest territories in Europe. With a single marriage, the Habsburgs suddenly gained control over wealthy regions covering parts of modern France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. No war, no invasion, no bloodshed, just one wedding. Then the strategy became even more outrageous. Maximilian's son, Philip the Handsome, married Joanna of Spain. At the time, Spain was becoming one of the strongest kingdoms in the world, with colonies spreading across the oceans. When the Spanish king died without a male heir, the Habsburg family suddenly inherited enormous territories and overseas empires. With a few strategic marriages, Austria's ruling family expanded beyond Europe itself. Then came Charles V, one of the most powerful rulers in human history. His titles were almost endless: Holy Roman Emperor, King of Spain, Archduke of Austria, Ruler of the Netherlands, King of Naples, Lord of Overseas Colonies. People joked that the sun never set on his empire because somewhere in the world, Habsburg territory was always under daylight. Many people associate the phrase, the empire, where the sun never sets, with Britain. But the idea actually appeared earlier with the Habsburg Empire. At this point, Austria had become a superpower unlike anything Europe had ever seen. But history has a cruel habit. The thing that creates success can also create destruction. The Habsburgs became obsessed with preserving their bloodline. Since marriage had made them powerful, they feared losing power through marriage to outsiders. So they began marrying within their own family. Cousins married cousins. Uncles married nieces. Close relatives repeatedly married each other generation after generation. At first, the damage was not obvious, but eventually, the consequences became catastrophic. The most tragic example was Charles II of Spain. He was the product of extreme inbreeding. Within the Habsburg family, Charles suffered from severe physical and mental disabilities. He could barely walk properly. He struggled to speak. He suffered constant illness throughout his life. His body was weak, his mind unstable, and his health continued collapsing year after year. Doctors later discovered horrifying conditions inside his body. His organs were severely damaged, and his genetic problems were extreme. Yet despite everything, he survived until the age of 39. But there was one thing he could not: produce an heir. When Charles died without children, the Spanish branch of the Habsburg family collapsed completely. And suddenly, every major power in Europe wanted a piece of Spain's empire. This triggered the War of the Spanish Succession, one of the biggest conflicts in European history. France wanted the Spanish throne. Austria wanted the Spanish throne. Britain feared France becoming too powerful. The Dutch joined the fight. Europe exploded into chaos. Although Austria gained some territories after the war, the Habsburg Golden Age was already beginning to fade. Then more disasters arrived. The French Revolution shattered Europe's old political order, and then came Napoleon. Napoleon completely transformed European warfare. He crushed armies across the continent and eventually dissolved the Holy Roman Empire itself, ending an institution that had existed for nearly 1,000 years. For the Habsburgs, it was devastating. Austria survived, but it was no longer the unstoppable superpower it once was. Still, Austria refused to disappear after Napoleon's defeat. Austria reorganized itself and remained influential in Central Europe. But a new rival was rising rapidly: Prussia. Prussia's military and industrial power grew stronger every year. Eventually, Austria lost influence over the German states, while Prussia unified Germany. Under its own leadership, Austria was forced to look elsewhere for survival. That led to the creation of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. On paper, the empire looked massive and powerful. It controlled huge areas across Central Europe, but internally, it was a disaster. The empire contained Germans, Hungarians, Slavs, and many other ethnic groups. Everyone spoke different languages, followed different traditions, and wanted more power. Even the army struggled because soldiers often could not understand commands from officers, speaking different languages in some cases. Promotion depended more on how many languages you spoke than your actual military ability. Then came the event that would change the world forever. In 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand visited Sarajevo. A Serbian nationalist assassinated him. That single gunshot triggered World War I. The Austro-Hungarian Empire entered the war already weakened from internal divisions. When the war finally ended, the empire completely collapsed. The once mighty Austrian Empire was broken apart into smaller nations. Centuries of power disappeared almost overnight, and yet Austria's story was still not over. Before World War II, Austria moved closer to Germany again. Many Austrians supported unification with Hitler's Germany. In fact, public support for joining Germany was extremely high at the time. After Germany lost the war, Austria tried to present itself as a victim rather than a willing participant. But the reality was more complicated. Austria was occupied after the war, just like Germany. However, during the Cold War, Austria skillfully positioned itself between East and West. Eventually, the country regained sovereignty and rebuilt itself economically. Then came another Austrian success story: industry, technology, tourism. Austria integrated deeply into the German industrial system and became highly successful in engineering, steel production, machinery, and automotive manufacturing. At the same time, its beautiful mountains, historic cities, and cultural heritage turned tourism into a massive source of income today. More than 60% of Austria's economy comes from the service sector. It remains one of the wealthiest and most stable countries in Europe. And perhaps that is the most fascinating part of Austria's history. This was a nation that conquered Europe through marriage instead of war. A nation that reached incredible heights through political strategy rather than brute force. A nation that nearly destroyed itself through obsession with bloodlines. A nation that collapsed, survived 2 world wars, and still rebuilt itself into one of the richest societies on earth. Sometimes the fate of nations looks strangely similar to the fate of people. Some rise through hard work. Some rise through luck. Some rise through violence. And Austria rewrote history through marriage. If you enjoyed this story and want more fascinating videos about hidden history, powerful empires, strange countries, and unbelievable events from around the world, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next incredible story.